Wooddale Place LLC. It's by the Division Street by the train station. A developer has acquired some of the apartment buildings over there and wants to put in a multi-story building. Before doing that multi-story building, what they were requesting is to come directly to the city council to bypass our honorable planning commission, bypass this committee, and just get some ideas of would this ever even fly. We've done this before for certain developers. We did it for the crematory a couple weeks ago. I think we did it for actually Ronte for the Wooddale and Irving Park at one point. So it's a nice thing we do sometimes before they dump a lot of money into plans, because they're saying, hey, if it's not even going to chance to fly, we'll stop right now. And I know the mayor had been contacted, and Mr. Mayor, if you don't object, if we could maybe put this on the agenda for the city council next week, just for a quick question and answer session. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, then I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'm calling to order the Finance and Administration Committee meeting of August 10th, 2006. Will the minute taker please reflect the same members are present? Next item is approval of minutes of July 13th, 2006. I make that motion. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is, it is a verbal from our interim finance director, Maggie Powers, on the audit update.
Thank you, Chairman Winger. The auditors started their field work last Monday. They've been out all last week, and they've been out all this week, and we're hoping that they'll be able to wrap up the field work in a couple of days. Then they will digest all the information we gave them. We will prepare more information for the report. Things will come together sometime in September, and we will, I feel at this point, meet all the deadlines for filing. We have to file our state report by October 31st. We should be in good shape for that.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Item is for information only. Next item is a report and recommendation on the banking services RFP. There was an RFP sent out to several banks and covering several different topics for services to the city. I think this was an excellent effort, and it was made possible by our interim finance director. She certainly has a lot of skills to do this and put together a great package, and then also reviewed by Alderman Ptolemy, who is who's very knowledgeable in the banking industry. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Maggie Powers to take us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Winger. The memorandum before you summarizes the 4 banks that did submit proposals for the city of Wooddale. Those banks are Itasca Bank and Trust, Suburban Bank and Trust, Charter One Bank, and J.P. Morgan Chase. There's a tabulation attached which has all kinds of details that I'm sure no one's really interested in about charges. You'll see that Itasca Bank and J.P. Morgan don't charge for things like ACH credits posted and deposit slips and things like that. They don't bother to charge for those things. They have themselves set up to deal with governmental customers, and the other banks do as well. But that was not nearly as important as what these banks were proposing in terms of our cash management. There are lots of ways for businesses and governments to handle their idle cash. And idle cash is cash that's not yet needed to pay checks that are clearing, things like that, okay? You can use sweep accounts, you can use zero balance accounts, you can use special savings accounts, you can use combinations of those in order to maximize your interest earnings and keep all the money for the city working. And after discussion, we pretty much determined that Itasca Bank and Trust, who already has a substantial amount of the city of Wooddale's business, is the best fit for the city of Wooddale to continue with. But the second part of the request for proposals has to do with credit card services. As you know, the city of Wooddale has never accepted credit cards. But we do feel there are instances where residents might like to pay a bill using their credit card. I thought about some of the people who had to buy their vehicle stickers if they have 5 cars in the house. That's a lot of cash to come up with, and maybe a credit card charge would have been a little easier. Certainly, people who come into the Community Development Department and need to post a cash bond of $125 might want to use their credit cards for that. People who are late paying their water bill but don't want to incur a penalty could call us up and give us the credit card information, and then we could settle their bill before the due date, that sort of instance. So we did ask all the banks to propose on that, and they all gave different kinds of proposals. I need to investigate this further, but it looks as if we're going to use an unbundled type service, which tends to reduce the overall cost to the city. You may or may not be aware of the fact that any merchant or anybody who accepts a credit card pays a fee for handling that. The person who makes the charge certainly pays a finance charge, but anybody who accepts the credit card also pays a fee. So this is important for us to understand how much the city would have to pay for each transaction. There's usually a transaction charge, and then there's what they call an interchange rate. And you'll see on the second page of that tabulation, there's a percentage that gets paid, and then there's an per item charge as well. What I'm proposing, if the council concurs, is to work with Itasca Bank to finalize these details and see what kind of account structure we can set up, both for the credit card services and for the cash management. And the people at Itasca Bank have indicated their willingness to work with the city in any way that they can. So I'll be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Alderman Ptolemy?
Maggie, could you just explain on the second page of your document, just for everybody that's up here, at the very bottom, where you're talking about investment of available cash balances and what the various banks had proposed?
Well,
Because I think that's important that people
That's
understand.
right. And I've sort of synthesized this because it's a little more complicated than what I've put here, but it's difficult to, everybody had sort of a different approach on this. If you'll notice at the far right column, JP Morgan Chase said that they would use sweep accounts. They would use the FF means federal funds rate, less 50 basis points. Now that's 0.50. That would be the rate they would pay. They also have a repurchase agreement account. They would pay, at the current rates, it would be 4.75%. Moving over to the left, Suburban Bank, they would recommend using a zero balance account. They would pay federal funds rate less 25 basis points. Charter One Bank, they have a checking with interest account, and they set the rate at federal funds plus 5 basis points. And then finally, Itasca Bank and Trust has indicated that they already have a 4-tier rate. They would add a 5th tier for certain balances. We'd have to have a substantial amount of money in the bank in order to have this 5th tier kick in, but that would be the Illinois funds rate plus 10 basis points. And let me just talk a little bit about Illinois funds, which we use because the state requires us to have those accounts set up so that they can transfer shared revenues to us directly. They don't use checks. All this money just gets transferred in. The nice thing about the Illinois funds, we have our general checking account with them. That works very well. Easy statements, very easy to make transfer transactions online. There's no paperwork that's required, but and they pay very competitive rates. But they are not collateralized. That is not to say they're not safe, but because it's government money and it is the Illinois Treasurer's Pool, this money is not collateralized. When municipalities go and put their money in an individual bank, they require collateral. And if you'll recall, when you passed the investment proposal, which is about a year ago now, we were requiring 110% collateral. What that means is whatever bank the city's money is in has to pledge their own investments to back up our balances. And they have to pledge 110% of whatever we put in. So if we put $1,000 in, they have to pledge $1,100 of securities to back that balance. And that's a nice safety net for governments. So there's no problem with putting money in the Illinois funds and then putting money in a bank. What we're attempting to do here is clean up some messy banking because we were using 2 main institutions and then a lot of smaller ones. The bookkeeping has become horrendous, and it's not giving a true picture of what we could earn as far as interest earnings by having the money more consolidated. So that was the whole purpose. But it always makes sense to go looking and see what people propose to you. So these 4 banks were grateful that they took the time to complete the proposal and get it in here by the due date.
So with that, it sounds like you need a motion to proceed with your recommendation.
I don't think so.
Okay, then I'm going to make a motion to concur with your memo dated August 7, 2006, for the banking proposals. The City of Wooddale pursue discussions with Itasca Bank and Trust for implementing a comprehensive banking arrangement. Is there a on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is report and recommendation on SSA numbers 1 and 2 fund transfers, and this is a verbal report.
Thank you. A few months ago, we talked about the fact that there were cash balances remaining in the Special Service Area 1 and Special Service Area 2 bank accounts. Basically, the law states that Special Service Area monies that have not been expended, either for the construction project itself or for handling the debt service, which includes principal and interest, should be abated to those people, those taxpayers who are in that special service area. And I'm delighted to say that our Assistant Finance Director researched the records and found some records in the old records in the Public Works garage that proved that the City of Wooddale did indeed abate Special Service Area 1 and Special Service Area 2 quite some time ago. So these monies that were left are left because the city was moving money back and forth between the general fund and the Special Service Area funds to handle checks that were being written to the contractors. And that should have been cleared out, but it wasn't. And so at first we thought all of this money would need to be refunded, but now that we've been able to determine that the abatements have taken place, those funds are remaining because they really belong to the general fund. The total we're talking about is approximately $358,000. And what we've done is make a journal entry as of the year ending April 30th, 2006, to move those monies into the general fund.
Alderman Ptolemy?
I would like to just say, great catch to you and your staff, because that is significant find for, in the benefit of, for the benefit of the city.
Thank you,
So
Alderman Ptolemy.
that helps immensely.
And
Nice job.
it was his digging, because we really didn't know. We took all the old audit reports, and that didn't give us enough information, but he finally found these old records.
Great job.
Alderman Subak?
The timing of the journal entry, why would we worry about making 06 look better? Since that's done, why don't we have the journal entry be for May 1?
Well, I suppose we could, but the reason why we did it is because it should have been done several years ago, and it may even go as a prior period adjustment. I haven't discussed this with the auditors yet.
Okay.
When we get to the very end of the audit, then we talk about things that refer to prior years. But
Okay.
both those special service areas have been over for some time. And this is more cleanup. I think
Because then if that goes in this year's, I just passed a surplus budget when we passed our budget, so. Right.
well, certainly it would still be available fund balance.
That item is for information only. Our next item is report and recommendation on the tax referendum phrasing. And you have the suggested verbiage for our November ballot, and I reviewed the verbiage. I certainly like it a lot better than the verbiage from last March, and that there are certain things towards the second half of it. I'm not so crazy about the second half after for property tax relief, because when I read that first part, shall the City of Wooddale, a non-home rural community, impose a 1% sales tax pursuant to the municipal retailer's occupation tax for property tax relief? I say to myself, as a voter, yeah, of course I'd want that for my property tax relief. But I understand, though, that We're working on this campaign to save city services, so it's not a showstopper to me to keep that in there. But the part that I don't like, and we do need to talk through it, and I'm looking for comments on it, is that last part, the proposed tax will not apply to sales of food or prescription drugs. And when I see that, I look at it like all food, and it's really not. So I think we either need to remove that sentence or fine tune it. Alderman Wesley.
Sorry. I don't know if we could actually remove that. I mean, I think that's the way it has to read. Because the problem is, what it's basically, we aren't talking, if I ain't mistaken, if I'm reading this right too, it's not talking about fast foods. You still get the 1% there. I think this is mainly referring to grocery stores and prescriptions. So you're still going to get the 1% sales tax from Burger King, McDonald's, and that, but it affects the retail of the grocery stores like Jewel, whatever grocery stores we got in here. I like to leave that in there because I think it might help them saying, hey, they aren't going to be charged for the grocery sales tax on that. I think that will be a benefit for us that we don't change that, so.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, the finance director has a statute here, and that's the way it's written in the statute, and I'll let her read it.
No, actually, it's not the way the statute is written, but if we do it the way the statute is, nobody will understand it. I'll just read you what it says. The tax may not be imposed on the sale of food for human consumption, that is to be consumed off the premises where it is sold, parentheses, other than alcoholic beverages, soft drinks, and food that has been prepared for immediate consumption, close parentheses, and prescription and non-prescription medicines, drugs, medical appliances, and insulin, urine testing materials, syringes, and needles used by diabetics. Okay? That's way too complicated to put in there. Our attempt in putting the word food and prescription drugs was, as you're saying, Alderman Wesley, to make sure people understood, residents of Wooddale, who probably do a lot of sales in groceries and in prescription drugs, wouldn't be impacted at all. But those who visit the city and buy fast food and buy general merchandise would pay that tax. Everyone will pay it on gasoline, and everyone will pay it on general merchandise. But Alderman Winger, I think, has made a good point here, too. We haven't strictly said grocery food, and I'm not sure if there is such a thing as grocery food. And our attorney was concerned that we word this so that this tax, should the referendum pass, would survive a protest or some kind of I guess a protest is the way to put it. Sure.
Alderman Ptolemy?
Yeah, something I wanted to bring up as long as we were going to be discussing this, and it has to do with the vehicle stickers. And here's what I'd like to propose right now, is that if in fact this referendum passes, what I would like to do is not eliminate the motor vehicle tax or sticker fees, but I'd like to take them back to where they were prior to this year, to the $15 per vehicle for cars and so on. So basically what we would do is we would rescind the ordinance that we passed this year, providing that this would get approved. It would be coincidental because if this gets approved in November, that we will not be able to collect on this probably until the 1st of July, if I'm right. And our vehicle stickers, the next time for our vehicle stickers would be June, so there would be no impact. What we would have to do is just make sure that in the budget process for next year that we have addressed it, and we could even pass the motion after the November election so that to rescind that original. But I'd strongly recommend that that this council consider it rescinding that vehicle sticker and taking it back to the original fees that were there.
Alderman Subak?
if I'm not mistaken, this is a deviation from your position at the public meeting with the strategic planning, because I think Alderman Wesley and I were talking about that if this passed, that we would offer the voters something in exchange besides the potential of eliminating city services. When we talk about the eliminate city services, we're talking about cutting back possibly on, public works employees, police employees, cutting back on staffing in the finance department, wherever we would need to cut next year. That's really when we talk about save city services, to keep the same amount of services. Some of us at the strategic planning meeting were saying we think that that might be too broad and that you do need to offer something to the residents. And so this is kind of now deviating from that, and I agree with the proposal, but if we're going to go forward with that, that should be, that letter that's going down that everybody's signing should be changed. This language in this proposal should be changed. It's say, if you pass it, we're going to, eliminate the increase in the vehicle sticker. We should say that right in this referendum. So I agree with you in theory, but we're kind of changing what we went over on that long Saturday in this discussion, which is okay, but let's get it done tonight, I think.
Would agree.
Okay, so let's take one at a time. The first would be the verbiage. Now, Ms. Powers, it's probably looking for you to sell me on that last sentence. So I'm going to ask you, if we put in something like the proposed tax will not apply to grocery store sales of food, will that help? Or the other word might be prepared. Will not apply to to unprepared food.
Just say sales of groceries or prescription drugs.
'Cause it's not-
Groceries, I like that.
Yeah, but it's close enough.
Most people don't realize if they look at their sales tax and try to figure it out when they're in line at Jewel, it doesn't make sense because you're paying different taxes on different items. The
Right, if you
sales
buy
tax-
Clorox.
Sales tax is different when you're buying paper towels than it is when you're buying fresh meat, okay? And I'm sure most people can't figure that out, but you'll notice there's tax codes along the side to show you how things are being taxed. So the more we try to qualify this word,
Yeah, I don't
probably
think
the less precise we are, and then we may have a challenge to this whole referendum, should it pass, because we've tried to qualify the language and narrow it to such an extent that we haven't covered everything. I think that's where the problem comes in.
Alderman Coles?
I think we should keep it just the way it is right now. That would be the best thing.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, and keep in mind, whichever language you choose really has to be reviewed and approved by the attorney as well. He wanted to get your input, and then he has to put it in the format that's acceptable. So we would take what your suggested language is, and we would provide it to the attorney, and he would write it in.
Okay. Okay, secondly, the second topic then, are we going to change our approach and then change this verbiage based on the vehicle sticker? Alderman Subak, and then I'll call Alderman Tomey.
Maybe we could leave the language however we modify it, if we do it all, but should the incentive be in here? Maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe the incentive needs to be in the letters that go out and so on and so forth, in the marketing campaign that we do to get it passed. Maybe it doesn't have to be specified in the actual referendum language.
Alderman Ptolemy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, again, one of the biggest complaints we had with the referendum the last time was that nobody really understood it. And I think when you look at this, the way it's written here right now, the November phrasing, it's very short and it's very to the point. I mean, you can't get it much better than that, okay? Without putting in additional wording that's going to start confusing different things. Because, as I said, like when you go to a grocery store, it's true. I mean, you buy paper towels, you buy laundry detergent, you're going to pay sales tax on that no matter what. It's the food per se that you're buying at the grocery store that you're not paying the tax on. And how do you qualify? It becomes very difficult in qualifying that. I think we keep that the way it is. I agree with Alderman Subak, though, that maybe the letter that we were sending around tonight and signing, we take it back and, have that reworded to include the incentive, if everyone is in agreement, with rescinding, the vehicle tax back to the original, what it was.
Alderman Coles, then I'm going to call Alderman Shockey.
All I can say is you gotta keep it as simple as possible, because when people go in to vote, they don't wanna read a lot. All they wanna do is either yes or no. If you got a whole, if you got a whole lot of things in the writing on the form, they're not gonna read it. Seriously, they're gonna just avoid it. So you gotta keep it as simple as possible, and this is as simple as I can. I think a 5-year-old can read this.
Alderman Shockey.
Yeah, I understand about city services. In the letter, we say we don't want to cut back on city services. But can you explain to me what it means when you say for property tax relief? What does that actually mean?
Mr. Manager.
Yes, the original intent of the legislature in providing the opportunity for communities to adopt the additional sales tax was because of the property tax cap to provide relief, so that we wouldn't have to continue to try to increase the little bit we can on the property tax. This would give a better way of imposing a tax rather than put everything on the property tax. So the legislation was passed, and we have a copy of it, and it says for the purpose of relief of the property tax. That's what it's for. So that it will provide revenues, but it won't increase your property tax.
Is there a fairly simple way to say this in that letter again? So both those things, number one about property tax relief, and number two about saving city services?
You want that added to the letter, not this.
I'm just wondering if there's a simple way to say it without going into a long discussion.
If I can ask if we work out the referendum phrasing first, and then we can pick that part up and have the discussion on the extras here. But I would like to nail down the verbiage, and I'm going to recognize Alderman Subak, then Mayor Johnson, then I'm going to make a motion.
I was just gonna make the motion,
And
so-
Alderman Shockey, okay.
I was
Alderman
gonna make
Subak.
I was gonna make the motion to approve the language, but I'll hold off so you can do it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
I like the language the way it is, and I also like the idea of the rollback on the vehicle stickers. I think the cost of that is about $140,000, and if this passes, the increase is $2.788 million, so to me, it's a no-brainer, if that helps us get a few extra votes. My question, though, did we get an opinion that we can decouple this from the municipal service occupation tax?
Mr. Manager.
Yes, in the preliminary discussion, that came up as a question, and looking at the actual language, we may not be able to decouple that. We had thought that because the second tax was of not real consequence, we could just eliminate this so there wouldn't be some confusion. And now it appears, in looking at the statute, that that may be a problem. So we will finalize that with the attorney by next week. We may have to add that other tax in because it says that, I believe it, do you have the language?
Not sure, but you can't impose one tax unless you've imposed the other. But it may be that you can't do the service tax if you haven't done the sales tax. I'm not sure if it flips over. There's 7 pages to this.
I think our city attorney, in the meantime, has asked for a legal opinion from the Attorney General or Department of Revenue, so maybe before we approve the language, it may be changing substantially.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Shockey.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned about, should we have that, about saving city services in the actual referendum? And I'm just wondering if that, is that too much of a threat, or I don't know. I know, but it'll be in a letter. It is in the letter, and we'll be talking about it at all our ward meetings and everything else. But I'm just, are we going too far? I mean, legally, are we going too far by, we'll save city services? I don't know.
Alderman Subak.
I think that if the attorney says we have to pass both taxes, then we need to say imposing 1% sales tax pursuant to statute and not name the statutes. And